Welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast. Here we nourish the gardens of our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. If you'd like to find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. Thanks for joining us. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Walled Garden Podcast. So I'm sure that many of you will know that over the past few years, there's been quite an interest in the similarities between Buddhism and Stoicism. Many people around the world are pointing out that there's many commonalities there that can really be merged beautifully, harmoniously together. These two philosophies from, different parts of the world, but nonetheless that share many core ideas, core principles and values. And so this made it all the more exciting a few months back when Kaya came to me and said, we've got to get Dr. Ranjini George on the show. And that's, of course, our guest for today. And Dr. Ranjini George, she is a person who is, swum in the pools of both Buddhism and Stoicism and has really taken a look at how these two philosophies merge. And that's why the title of our Q&A and interview that we had with her a few weeks back was called What We Can Learn from a Zen Monk and a Roman Emperor. And so it was just such a pleasure to have Ranjini in our presence, to be able to talk to her about these things, these various ideas that she's been exploring, and also just about her work as a professor, where she is sharing a lot of these ideas with her students. And so I don't want to spend too much time in this introduction. I want to dive straight into the interview, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background of Ranjini so that you know who we're dealing with here. So Dr. Ranjini George holds a PhD in English literature from Northern Illinois University. She also has a master's degree in English literature from St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, and an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia, Canada. More recently, she won the first place in Canada's inaugural coffee shop author contest for her travel memoir, which is a work in progress, called Miracle of Flowers, in the footsteps of an emperor, a goddess, a story, and a tiffin stall. She was an associate professor of English at Zayed University, Dubai, and she currently teaches Stoicism, mindfulness, and creative writing at SCS, University of Toronto, classes such as Stoicism and the Good Life, Stoicism and Writing for Discipline and Productivity, Meditation and Writing, and Dear Diary, Marcus Aurelius, Anne Frank, and Thich Nhat Hanh. In 2019, she received the SCS University of Toronto Excellence in Teaching Award. Her book, Through My Mother's Window, Emirati Women Tell Their Stories and Recipes, was published in Dubai in December 2016. And with all that said, my friends, I present to you my conversation with Dr. Ranjini George. The first question that I just want to throw out to you is, could you please just tell everybody here in our meetup a little bit more about yourself, your background, and perhaps please dive into a conversation about your depth of philosophical experience, I guess, in all the different ranges of paths to enlightenment, you might say. So I'll throw that over to you.
Okay, good question, Simon. And thank you for being here. Hi, Christine. Christine is in Toronto too from my class. And so I was born in Calcutta, India, lived in Kenya, studied in the US, taught in Dubai and Oman, and immigrated to Canada more than 10 years ago. And so my field really is literature, and faith was something that was really important to me from the time I was young, really young. whether it was through dreams, through interest, but really faith and writing. And so when I was really young, around maybe 10 years old, this Indian girl in Bangalore, I began keeping a diary and addressed it to Anne Frank, who I have here, because through the power of words, like she was my sort of best friend, and I sort of emptied my heart out to her. And then I went on to study literature, and I've always been interested in philosophy. Philosophy at that time through the lens of literature, so existentialist philosophers and others, and I was interested in dualism. Things like, for my PhD thesis, I worked on William Golding, and he and what he brought in, John Steinbeck with East of Eden and others. I grew up in a country where Hinduism is really present, and had it gradually developed a deep interest in studying, especially the feminine face of Hinduism. Figures like the fierce feminine, Kali, who I sort of feared, but sort of drew on in my contemplations as I tried to develop that aspect myself, of how do you take fierce action for yourself, how do you uphold yourself, even, and not slip into idiot compassion, because there is that other side of compassion. I'm interested in Sufism. I studied Hinduism with different teachers. So just this, and then Buddhism. I also teach I'm a visiting teacher at the Tara Mandala Buddhist Retreat Center, and stumbled onto Stoicism. And that's a long story, but I'll keep it really brief. I got a gift of a Roman bust while I lived in Dubai, and didn't know his name. Later on found out that he was the adoptive father of Marcus Aurelius, Antoninus Pius. And more recently came across Donald Robertson's book, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. And when I read the book, I was struck by the similarities between Buddhism and Stoicism. As I went through his book, I thought, my goodness, this is exactly what Thich Nhat Hanh says, or what the Dalai Lama says. So that really is my journey to how I even came to Stoicism.
Yeah, I love that, and this is what I mean when I say that depth and also that breadth of experience with various forms of enlightenment or various paths towards a deeper experience in life. You've been around the Buddhism or the Hinduism and the Stoicism and all of the isms that are guiding us towards this path of, as I said, this deeper experience. And I guess what for you do you think were some of the major components of both the Zen tradition and the Stoicism tradition that you found so interlinked?
Mm-hmm. So, I'll backtrack for a second. That for a long period in my life, when things went wrong, I would just pray, and I would wait for something external to happen. It seems unbelievable now, but it didn't strike me even in my 30s that there was much that I could do with my mind to deal with that situation. And so when I came to Buddhism and I started, it's really a psychology, and how do you train your mind? How do you, cognitive reframing, present moment awareness, how do you live in a state where you don't feel that happiness is around the corner, but really happiness is here and now? How do you move from the state where you're constantly never in the present moment, but worrying about the future and, either sad or mourning some happiness of the past? So it was these kind of things of just learning that this mind, which they say in Buddhism, if you look at the deities, they are holding a jewel. And the jewel is the jewel of the wish-fulfilling mind, which is the awakened mind. So this idea that the mind could actually be trained through daily practice, and that the very things that I resisted and wished hadn't happened, the very suffering that I, would sort of take away all my happiness, was really the very thing that could be compost, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, that from which fruits and vegetables can grow. I remember once walking on the beach in Dubai and, and thinking, my goodness, so much mud, so much suffering. And the thought that came to me was bigger lotus. Thich Nhat Hanh says, no mud, no lotus. A lotus can't grow on marble, it really grows on the mud of our suffering. So this idea that actually within myself, I had this stoic nature, this Marcus Aurelius nature, this Buddha nature, that I actually had this potential, and that through daily practice. And I think that was really important to me, when Seneca says each day is a life, and when Thich Nhat Hanh says every morning when you wake up, say 24 hours before me, that it's really a precious human life. That daily practice and that acknowledgement that each day of my life was a life, was really huge. And then there's so many similarities, like it could go on forever. The concept of impermanence, the concept of praise and blame, that it's just, praise is just empty sound. The ability, even in the way I do my work, as Marcus Aurelius says, that if we could do our work without being attached to secondary considerations of will this work be successful, will this book be published, but actually just to do our work with the things we can control. So really accessing these philosophies, Buddhism has often been called a philosophy, actually accessing it allowed me to access joy. And both Buddhism and Stoicism have this huge emphasis on self-examination. It's huge. I mean, every single day, Pythagoras' golden verses, ask yourself, what did I do? How did I, what could I have done better? What did I leave out? This constant self-examination that you do with maitri, that you do with loving kindness, not with judgment, not with, not to feel terrible about yourself, but to do it, to cradle it. As Thich Nhat Hanh would say, you cradle that jealousy like a mother cradles a child. You cradle that depression like a mother cradles a child. And you bring to it not just the practice, but the energy of mindfulness. And so there was just, I find so much, even prasoke, stoic mindfulness, stoic journaling. There's so many areas. And it's a way of living fully. When I look back, before I sort of woke up to what I could do with this mind, I would spend not just days, but weeks in complaint, weeks in blaming others, weeks in wishing life was not what it was. So it really, it turns everything around. It's life-changing. You learn to water, you learn to look at your own neurosis, your own habitual patterns. As Thich Nhat Hanh would say, you learn to water the seeds of joy in yourself, and you learn to cut off the nutrients from the things that bring you and others suffering. So really the spotlight, instead of saying so-and-so hurt me and so-and-so said this and so-and-so wronged me or betrayed me, really turning that back to, what the Stoics tell us, not the externals that you can't control, set it aside and look at what you can control, which is your own character, your mind, your courage, your temperance, and so forth. So I find that both these philosophies have just been, incredibly life-changing and nourishing for me.
And this is something that we so often hear is, especially just doing the podcast over the past few years, is you do hear people say, talk about Buddhism or, talk about Taoism and look at all these different traditions that I've found, that so very much align with the sort of stuff that we're saying here. And I love the imagery that you're giving us. You mentioned that it is the compost, of the mind that we're growing these beautiful seeds in. Seneca even discusses this idea that there are these divine seeds scattered within our souls, within our minds, right? And we nourish them. And even at the Walled Garden, I mean, the imagery is, or kind of one of our taglines is, nurturing the gardens of our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. So we're here to plant those seeds and then to water them and to see what comes of that when we decide to intentionally seek after wisdom and truth and virtue and the divine. And one of the ways that we obviously do that, and you mentioned this, is through daily practice. And I wonder, could you maybe talk a little bit more about some of the daily practices from various traditions that you've explored that you think are most helpful? I know you've mentioned a few, but I think it's really important that we set this question aside and say, what can people do every day if they want to nourish those seeds in their mind?
Mm-hmm. So, so in terms of the way I begin my day, they say in Buddhism that if you don't, and in Stoicism too, if you don't remind yourself of what your core values are, whatever the day comes, you won't ride the day will ride you. So one of the first things I do is really that recollection of my aspirations. So in Buddhism, a key aspiration in Mahayana Buddhism is bodhicitta, which is the aspiration for all sentient beings. This idea, may all beings be happy, may they be free of suffering and the roots of suffering. And so this reminder of this aspiration sort of helps me to sort of mitigate, to work with this egoic preoccupation with self, me. And then just this reminder of, I'm sometimes working on different things, different challenges. So sometimes it could be, a reminder to have more patience, a reminder not to speak when I'm angry, but to wait. With whatever deep listening. So at different periods, sometimes I'm working on a particular quality, and I bring that to mind first thing in the morning. I do rituals. I actually do offer incense and water offering. I don't think the rituals by themselves need to be done or not done, but for me, it's a reminder. And so by actually doing it, it sort of reminds me. I'm huge in I journal. I journal in the morning, first thing. I teach a class called Dear Diary, which is Marcus Aurelius, Anne Frank, and Thich Nhat Hanh. And Anne Frank, she begins her diary by saying, "Dear Kitty, Dear Kitty, I can tell you everything which I haven't told anyone else." So I think of paper as this bodhisattva. In Buddhism, we say this awakened being that actually is compassionate. Paper sort of holds your griefs and so journaling for me is a spiritual practice. So my day really does begin with the meditation sitting, but also with the practice of journaling. And then through the day, I try to do check-ins, breath breaks. I try to slow down. And at the end of the day, I there is some kind of looking through the day, scanning the day, and sort of seeing what I could have done better, and all that. Touching on your question, Simon, about different traditions, because I've studied with Hindu teachers from the Vedic tradition, and even in Buddhism, we have the use of mantras. Thich Nhat Hanh has very simple mantras, things like happiness is here and now, nowhere to go, nothing to do. When you find yourself too speedy, flow as a river when you're stuck. Yesterday, Kai in class said, fate is not something that happens to you, but it's something that happens through you. So dropping our resistance to where some of the things that destiny or life has brought us, but letting it flow through us. So he has simple mantras like flow as a river, present moment, wonderful moment. And then in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and in the Hindu tradition, you have mantras that are associated with the sacred feminine, like the female Buddha, Om Tare, Tu Tare, Ture Soha. The repetition of the mantra, like the rosary, when you use it with the 108 beads, is a way to still your mind. And that's a practice that I also do. So, different things.
Well, I want to ask something there, because what I'm seeing as a theme is ritually coming back to attention. And I mean, I want to ask something about this, because I was recently talking with a client, and we this is something that so often comes up, which is that sometimes you can just be in your day and then all of a sudden you just wake up and you're just somewhere doing something that perhaps you didn't think about, perhaps you didn't intentionally go there, but you're just there. It's like you just wake up and, oh, I'm in front of the fridge right now getting a snack, or oh, I'm just looking at my phone on Facebook and scrolling through. Hopefully, you don't wake up and be like, oh, I've just slapped a person or something like that. But sometimes it happens. you just wake up, and I often try to think, okay, well, what is the best approach to helping people to be? Because it seems like our goal with these meditative practices would be to be awake more of the time, to actually be here intentionally awake and ready to respond to the callings, the promptings of this particular moment. And what I'm hearing in your answers there is that we need these kind of rituals throughout our day to remind us to stay awake, right? And you mentioned that you use in your rituals, maybe some incense or certain things. I think that is completely reasonable to add something as a stimulus or something. To a lot of people, it will seem kind of religious or a little bit airy-fairy or woo-woo and stuff. I don't think so. And I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit more about your experience with rituals, and because we see these in every religious tradition and perhaps less philosophical traditions, but nonetheless in Stoicism, we do have rituals. Could you just talk to the importance of rituals as a way of bringing our attention back and wakefulness, I guess?
Mm-hmm. So I think the rituals are just a way of bringing our attention. So now at my writing desk, this is a coaster that I got from Key West. I don't know if you can see it, but this is Ernest Hemingway's, his writing room. I have a Flannery O'Connor or something here. So it's a way of having that space call you. It's a reminder. It's a reminder, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, there is no country but the country of the present moment. And Marcus Aurelius, sort of says the same thing in different ways. He says each of us lives only in the present. So there is that, but yet we are often not in the present. Yet we don't live, we're not fully embodied. We don't really, when we listen, we don't really listen. We don't listen to ourselves. We don't listen to others fully. We don't listen to the world around us. So the whole practice really of mindfulness, and in the Zen tradition, there are fewer rituals, like say than the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. But I think it's it's your preference, whichever way, what works for you. And for me, objects, having Flannery O'Connor's a magnet with a house is a reminder of my aspiration to write and her love for writing. So I think that's what rituals do. And for me, when I engage in that, it's a way of reminding myself that slow down, feel your feet on the earth, feel your breath, acknowledge that this is another day and you are still alive, and being alive is a gift. Thich Nhat Hanh would go on to say that the one, and quoting from the Heart Sutra, which is the key text of Mahayana Buddhism, that the one who bows and the one who is bowed to is empty. So we are not really putting God in a particular place, but we are really it's a way of centering yourself and connecting yourself to those aspirations. So I find rituals useful. I mean, that said, it might, as the Dalai Lama says, not everybody you don't have to be Chinese to eat Chinese food. Not everybody has the same taste. It works for me. But I think the rituals, even, when you're repeating the mantra of, say, the female Buddha, Tara, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Soha, and you're repeating it 108 times, you're learning a certain discipline. You're learning to stay instead of this constant, what Thich Nhat Hanh calls the hurry sickness. We are always running. He says we never stop. He says the miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on earth with mindfulness. So this, whatever it is, whatever your ritual is, for some writers, it's sharpening their pencils and getting their cup of coffee. Whatever your ritual is, whatever it is that helps you enter that space. And, as Seneca reminds us, it's not lack of time, it's how we use time. And then our time is our life. So what are we running after? It's that reminder to slow down. So when we wash dishes and we find we are thinking of our project, Thich Nhat Hanh would say that if you do that in a hurry and you're thinking of your project, you've lost your life at that particular point of time. So the goal is really meditation, not just on the cushion, but meditation in action. Your whole life becomes, that's the goal, a meditation, right?
I wonder if have you spent much time with Seneca's work yet in your study of Stoicism, or are you mostly around Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus?
I have read a little bit of Seneca, but especially like his essay on anger. But I have to say that I focused mostly on Marcus Aurelius. I think as a writer, because it's a journal, it really resonated with me. But yeah, there's so much I've learned from Seneca and so much from Epictetus. But
well, I'm going to have to put the call out there. Oh, sorry about the echo there, because Seneca, there's actually a lot of scholars who believe that he wasn't actually writing his letters to a specific person, but he was writing to the persona that he set up in his mind. This person who he said, okay, I'm going to be writing to you, but really he's writing to himself, and he's writing to the people of the world. And he talks about so many of the things that you're mentioning here, even just reminding us how bad we are at predicting anything in the future. And so when we go ahead into the future and we say, he said that fear and fear and hope are bedfellows, essentially,
Yes.
because they're both saying, well, if this happens in the future, I'll be happy or I'll be sad. And we're so bad at predicting. But I'd love to ask something about just having these items around that remind us of certain things, because we are certainly kindred spirits. I mean, on my desk here, I have about a year and a half ago, I have these little rocks that I found and picked up on a beach over in St. Martin in the Virgin Islands when I was working on a cruise over there. And I brought them home, and I never knew what I was going to do with them. But surprising to me is I put them on my desk, and I put a big one in the middle, and then I surrounded them. So it's kind of like a little thing in the middle, and it looks like a little sun of rocks. And then there's another few little rocks that I put there that build into a little pyramid. And, you know, I've got this strange little thing here that's just like a little vase with some flowers in it. And it was weird to me when I started doing this. I was like, is this weird that I'm putting these things on my desk? Why am I doing this? And then I started to notice that the more I got into the perhaps spiritual traditions, the more I started awakening to perhaps more of the ritualistic tradition, it started making sense to me a little bit more, because what's happening is I'm making meaning in my life. I'm surrounding myself with beautiful things, even just the art on the wall. Or I tell people, build a library. Even if you don't read the books, at least build a library, so that every day you walk into a room and you think, oh, look at all of this brilliant knowledge that these brilliant thinkers thought up and put in this book for me, and it inspires you. And I wonder what's happening there when we surround ourselves with beauty, or when we have these items in our life that remind us of certain things. What do you think that says about our capacity as human beings? Like what I don't know, what's happening there that is so special, because it's strange to me.
Yeah, I think it's like, Amma, who's a hugging saint in India, she says that we're all climbing the same mountain, but we have different paths. And some of my friends are very Zen. They like completely uncluttered spaces, nothing on the wall, read books on Kindle because they don't like to accumulate objects. They find it really burdensome. And that works. And that works for them. But I think whatever works as a reminder, but for me, like I have a picture of Marcus Aurelius up here, and I have Thich Nhat Hanh's, this is it. This is it, this is it, this moment, this is it, this life, this is it, on the wall behind me, and a photograph. And what it reminds me, as maybe somebody triggers something and I find myself slipping into anger or depression or anything, when I look at it, and I have this postcard that says each step you make should bring you closer to the Pure Land. And so then I ask myself, is this what I'm going to do right now? Is it going to get me closer to where I want to be? So I have these reminders. I'm the kind of person who needs reminders. I travel with them in my purse, and in a hotel, I have a little shrine next to me. It's a reminder of the kind of human being I aspire to be, the kind of life I want to live, because I'm working with myself and all the stuff I carry, all my patterns, some really neurotic, right? I mean, we all have neurotic patterns. We all have ways that we've been wounded and hurt, and we can. So I think life has so much of suffering, and we are all feeling this now, with what is going on in the world. We are bombarded and we see these images. There's no escaping it. So it's not easy being a human being. It's not easy being joyful, which is our birthright. It's not easy living with impermanence, having our loved ones die. It's not easy. I mean, in classes, you'll hear of great loss, why people come to Stoicism, why And, sometimes I just lie down after class and I just feel this, I wish I could take that away, but I can't. And you feel their grief, you feel the suffering, but there's nothing you can do. And I think all these philosophies are giving us ways of how do we still recover joy? How do we still do our work? How do we stay compassionate without keep an open heart? In the Jennifer song, let sorrow be the doorway to an open heart. Let it be an open heart, not closed, because we can shut down, we can give in to addictive tendencies. We can sleepwalk through life, we can shut out other people's suffering. But how do we, I think part of this path of both Stoicism, the circle of concern and the view from above, and in Buddhism, this, how do we stay open to how do we listen to our own suffering and the suffering of others? How do we help others? How do we live, whether there's something after life or not, how do we live this life well? And I think life's not easy, it's not, impermanence is not easy. I mean, it's good news, Thich Nhat Hanh says. You have to have impermanence, otherwise the child won't grow up. Impermanence is good news, but with impermanence comes death and loss and illness. And so we're dealing with all this, and we are human beings and we feel. And so I think what Stoicism, this therapy for the soul, what it does is it helps us to connect to this happy life, that's the way I see it. I mean, for me, it's just that practical, this sort of, it just helps me, Marcus did it, he was a man, and Frank. I mean, I'm just stunned that she lived in a world of such horror, a world gone mad. And yet she used cognitive reframing. She would say, all this difficult things is good material for my journal. She would find ways. She would find little tiny things, seeds of joy. And she had no idea, like Marcus Aurelius had no idea that his journal would live on. And so it's incredible. So their voice, I mean, in Buddhism, or we would say that maybe in the short term, goodness may not win. Because everything in me, I remember, just sort of seeing evil as I read the diary of Anne Frank, and wishing it was otherwise. I mean, her last diary entry is 3 days before they were caught. But in the long scheme of things, her voice has reached millions. And so has Marcus's voice, So there is a way that what we do echoes through the centuries. There is a way that our physical body dies, but our good deeds, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, our actions are our only belongings. And so this leading the good life, being kind, being just, being courageous, will continue. And so we are a continuation of all that, right? We are a continuation of all the people we admire.
I have so many questions. There's so much good stuff there. I'm really glad that before I ask these questions, I just want to mention to everybody, in about 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to transition over to a Q&A period. So if you have had a question so far that you've written down or you've thought of, or if you just have one that you'd really like to ask, make sure you just go down and put your hand up in the Zoom. If you see the reactions button down the bottom, you can put your hand up and I'll just go through who has their hands up. But I'm so glad, Ranjini, that you brought up the inevitable suffering of life and in a sense, the tragedy that we see so much around us, because people could be forgiven for thinking, okay, well, look at us here talking about how to become enlightened, how to have attention, how to feel true joy in life, while, I mean, you turn on the news and look, the world is burning around us. I mean, there's so much horror in the world just at the moment. And we cannot help but feel that that sorrow, you mentioned that sorrow is a gateway to, I'm forgetting
an open
what,
heart,
open
an
heart.
open heart, a doorway to an open heart. Yeah.
That's right. And I guess one of the things that you've also mentioned is, I'll try and draw a couple of ideas together here. One of the things you also mentioned is this idea that in the short term, perhaps evil or injustice or badness will win. But it seems like in so many of these traditions, whether you look at Genesis and God said that it was good, and then it was very good, this creation. And then we look at the Stoics, and I was thinking about this the other night, and it was kind of an epiphany for me, because the Stoics believe that we are a part of a rationally ordered cosmos. And one of the things that technically means is that everything has a place. Everything has a purpose. Everything is directed towards the good of the whole. And that's a horrifying idea that I don't think that we meditate on enough, because if you truly believed in that idea, and I think that it is almost a leap of faith to believe in that, but if you truly believed in that, then everything that's happening in your life you would look at as an opportunity to participate in this rationally ordered whole that is leading towards something that might be good for you. And it's almost like a psychopathic belief, right? But at the same time, it kind of makes sense. And I think that once you take that leap of faith, you see how it could be a powerful motivator for you in your life to participate to the fullest of your capacity. And I wonder, do you think it's even possible for us to make that leap, to believe that things are in the long term aimed at the good, or aimed at being a part of a well-ordered whole? As David Feidler might have said, the meaning of cosmos actually is beautiful order. So I wonder, what you would say about that, these traditions that teach us that there is a purpose to all of the things that happen, even the tragedy. And I know that this is a horrible time to be asking this question because of the terrors that are going on in the world, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless.
So, I mean, the idea that there's a providence, but that shapes our end. I mean, but it's a difficult question, Simon, in the sense that I feel that, why do you do these podcasts? Why do I teach Stoicism? Part of it is that if more and more people wake up, because to me it seems completely irrational that people won't reach for wisdom, that your life can be motivated solely by wanting fame or money when it's impermanent. But the thing is, it's always existed through time. I mean, Marcus Aurelius himself didn't, have much influence over Commodus, and all that. So I think part of the reason why we do this is, or why we write this, or why we teach this, is this hope that just as when we reach these philosophies, something in us grew, that'll happen collectively. Because I don't think it needs to happen. And that's where choice comes in. Often there are these points, these crossroads of choice, where you can go one way in history or another way. So whether we succeed or not, the point is, I remember the Dalai Lama saying, we still try. Whether even our effort, I mean, the Bodhisattva aspiration is may all sentient beings. It's an impossible aspiration. I mean, you can't reach all sentient beings, but you sort of set yourself this task, and that there will be more goodness in the world. And then these things will not happen because we have choice. Cleanthus says, lead on God and destiny to that goal, fixed for me long ago. I will follow, and even if my will is weak, I will soldier on. There is that sense of, a destiny, but there is so much of choice, even in our own life. even in my own life, when I want to escalate a conflict, when I want to retaliate, I'm making a choice. So there is karma. Even if you don't believe in other lives, there is karma just in that one situation where I can retaliate or not retaliate, and either escalate and have a terrible day and fight, or actually have, try to listen to see where that's coming from. So we have this choice even in our personal lives, day to day. Epictetus says that even for a moment, our mindfulness cannot slip, because what will we do in that moment when we are not mindful? So I think that, there is that sense of that somehow goodness carries on, but there is this aspiration that as more and more people reach for wisdom, that just as we feel on fire, that there will be that awakening. There will be that awareness and mindfulness and kindness. But the Dalai Lama says that we have to be trained. We really have to be trained. That loving kindness, thinking about others, compassion practices. Buddhism, there's a lot of compassion practices that we need training, and we are not trained in our schools. We are not trained to think of others. We're trained to think of ourselves mostly. So it's this, we're trained to be egoic. And yet the thing is that the ego is the source of suffering. More and more and more and more for me. Let me have more land. Let me have, it blows our mind. Like, how can that be more important? But it's happening. It's happened before, and it's still happening. I had somehow this naive belief that the world was more small with technology, and so somehow things could not happen, but they're still happening. But I think that's, we have a lot of free will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's that's my take.
Well, I just think that it's so vital what you're saying there, but there's two sides to what you're saying there, because on one hand you're saying we have the free will, so we do have to think about me. What am I going to do in this situation? Yes. And but at the same time, in service of the greater good. So perhaps we start by assuming that we might not even know what it means to aim at the highest good. That's probably a good place to start. But you do remind me of something that I was always taught growing up. I grew up in the Mormon tradition, and one of the key fundamental elements of the Mormon theology is that God gives us free will. It's like, if you take that away, then Mormons just fall apart. It's like free will. You can make this choice. And even in Stoicism, there's this idea that we don't control much at all, right? And we have these impressions, you might say, these stories that pop up in our mind. Well, he did this and they did this because of this. And, we have these impressions that pop up, but we have the choice to pause and reflect and to say, okay, well, I'm going to assent to this or to that. And it's so often about getting us to just pulling our attention back in and saying, okay, what are you going to assent to today in this moment, right here, right now? But I just love this idea that it's not about us, it's about how we can serve humanity as a whole. But then, sorry, I'm just drawing ideas here. Even Seneca, he says, I'm going to paraphrase here. He says something along the lines of, do not believe that the person who lives for himself is not at the same time living for everybody else, right? Because there's an inner path that we follow, that if you will follow that inner journey of service to the outer world, but through your own inner actions and being very careful with those, beautiful things can come about. So Ranjini, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I really want to give you a chance before we let everybody have some questions here. And Kai Whiting has just jumped in. Kai, welcome. But if you just want to share with us how people can come and get more involved in what you're doing at the University of Toronto, because you're doing some beautiful work up there and your journaling classes, and perhaps we'll dive into a bit of a Q&A once you've given us that.
Right. So, I teach at the School of Continuing Studies at the University of Toronto. So I teach in the creative writing program. And I also teach Stoicism in the arts and humanities. So I teach Stoicism and the Good Life, which runs in March, April every year. So we are in the midst of a class, and the Dear Diary class, which is Marcus Aurelius, Anne Frank, and Thich Nhat Hanh, where we do Buddhism, Stoicism, and writing, journaling. And that happens in November, towards the end of October, November, December. So they are online classes, and you're welcome to join. If you're interested in writing, there's meditation and writing. So my own training in meditation, and I brought that into writing. So I have classes in those areas. Other classes like mindfulness, Stoicism, and writing for discipline and productivity, because I find that even, there's so much that you can learn from the Stoics about how to use your time. I mean, it's been huge for me. It's really helped me. I'm still working on it, but it's really huge working with our habits, because our habits are so deep rooted. Like I think of it, it's like a ship turning course. We do 1%, we move in the direction that we want to go to. Yes, so y'all are welcome. They can be taken as one-off courses. So we have students actually from everywhere. And they can also be taken as part of a creative writing certificate, or arts and humanities, or a mindfulness certificate. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So you can find me on the website.
You've been listening to the Walled Garden podcast. If you'd like to attend any of our free meetups and events, or if you'd like to get one-on-one mentoring with either Sharon LaBelle, Kai Whiting, or myself, just go to thewalledgarden.com. But for now, don't forget to nourish those gardens in your mind.